Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. So, gosh, I never thought I'd be talking about Erin Patterson again, or at least until the appeal, because anyway, let's just refresh our memories. Erin Patterson, the mushroom murderess, invited these poor unfortunate people, these four people up in the top right corner or left hand by the time it goes out. I don't know how it's in my screen here. Corner, four people, four elderly people, well, in their 60s anyway. Once you get into your 60s, you don't like people calling that, describing that as elderly. But anyway, ages ranging, I think, from 66 to 70. Four, how can I put them? So the parents of Errin. Let's have a look at Errin. Just in case, I'm sure you haven't forgotten Erin Patterson. We covered this case very closely. We covered the trial. This woman, the sort of like suburban mum, supposed ordinary in lots of ways, quite well off, quite a lot of money, divorced, not divorced actually, I think separated from her husband Simon. There he is. And she invited him over for lunch. Not only him, but also his parents, who is Don and his wife Gail Paterson, and then Heather Wilkinson, their friend. That's Gail's sister, Heather, and her husband Ian. And they were all invited over to lunch at Erin Patterson's house. In the end, Simon Patterson, the husband, ex-husband, estranged husband, he decided not to go because, I mean, I do get the feeling that the reason he decided not to go was because he suspected trying to poison, because allegedly she tried to poison him a couple of times before, at some point, in intensive care. The food that Errin had cooked him, mystery to all of us, why the rest of them, went. Probably Ian and Heather didn't know anything about that. That was the first time they'd ever been over to Erin's house. They were thrilled to be invited. They said the meal was delicious. They were over the moon with their invitation. But it seems like Don and Gail maybe had been told by Simon that he thought, she wished him ill will, but they went along anyway. I think they're very naive people, nice people, very religious people. They probably didn't think in a million years that this horrible woman would do what she did to them. And of course, she was found guilty and she is appealing. So, or she's trying to appeal. Whether her appeal will be allowed or not, I don't know. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. We haven't talked about it for a while because there's nothing, she has been found guilty now, though we will be talking about her appeal should it come to pass. She's been sentenced. There's a bit of outrage about her sentencing. She's appealing against her sentence, even though she only actually got, I think it's 33 years in prison. Now she's in her 50s, so she'll be in her 80s should she ever come out of prison. But why was it not prison? She's killed 3 people. This is a triple murder, a premeditated murder. She sat with those people and watched them eat what she knew was going to kill them. She made them a beef Wellington or individual beef Wellingtons and laced them with death mushrooms, the most lethal mushroom that you can imagine, that she'd foraged. She told lie after lie after lie. She told them a lie at the dinner, said that she had cancer, but she didn't. They all sat there and prayed for her. This is I think we can't, when you're talking about Erin Patterson, you just have to think of the level of evil of this crime. Premeditated, sat and watched them eat what was going to kill them, let them pray for her for a cancer that she did not have, that she was lying about. Just thought she was superior to everybody. And then she told lie after lie after lie. She never had a dehydrator. Oops, turns out she did. She'd never foraged for mushrooms. Oops, turns out she did. You couldn't count the number of lies this woman told. So 33 years seems quite light, isn't it? It's only 11 years for each person she killed. And then for Ian Wilkinson, who by some miracle survived, and luckily that meant he could give testimony against her. And that was important testimony, because he testified that the plates that Erin Patterson served her own food on, and the plates she served the food to the others on, were different kinds of plates. It was also him, of course, that testified that she told him she had cancer, and they all prayed together. I mean, if he would have died, if Ian Wilkinson would have died, would have been even more difficult. It would have been difficult because they wouldn't have been able to expose all of Erin's lies, would they? So anyway, justice was served. She was found guilty, but so she's appealing against her sentence, which now has meant that the prosecution have responded in kind, and they are appealing against the sentence as well, saying it was too lenient. So this appeal may well backfire on Errin. I certainly hope it does, because if the prosecution probably wouldn't have put in that appeal if she wouldn't have put in an appeal. But that's Errin, clever clogs, super sleuth, her Facebook friends called her, but she's one of those thickos who think she's more clever than everybody else, cleverer than everybody. She thought she could, she stood up on the stand, and she was the only person who gave evidence in her defense, whereas the prosecution had over 50 witnesses stand up and give evidence against her. Errin was the only person who stood up and spoke in her own defense. No character witnesses, no friends, she has a sister, but the sister's been very quiet. So yeah, she's just a vile person, isn't she? Very horrible person. Anyway, the reason I'm doing this video today is because her estranged husband, I don't know if he's, trying to get a divorce now or what's going on now, he is just about to publish a tell-all memoir, because at the trial, he did speak at the trial, but he could not speak about the attempts on his life, or the alleged attempts on his life. He wasn't allowed to talk about that. So he's apparently going to release this book that tells, his side of the story. So that's what we're going to talk about. So first of all, I just want to say thank you, as always. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Please leave your DNA on the like button and the subscribe button. It's absolutely free. Press the notification bell so you get notifications of new videos. A very special thank you to my members. This Thursday, we're going to have an exclusive members live. I'm looking forward to that. We've not done one for a little while, so I'm looking forward to that. If you want to join in that live, which will be a chit chat and talk about whatever you like. to be honest, and ask questions, etc. Please, you can join. There'll be details on the channel links of how to join. I think I've pinned a message as well. Hello, you lovely lurkers. Hello to, and thank you for those who've bought me coffees and sent PayPals and things like that. So, hi, lovely lurkers. Nice to see you this morning. Hope you're well. Hi, you replay crew. Thank you again for watching. And just thank you to everybody who makes any positive contribution to my chat. To my channel. I said chat because I'm going in. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Daniel. So there's only Daniel at the moment in the chat, but I'm sure there'll be more come along as we go. So what do we think about this? Do you think it's, before I look at sort of the details of this, do you think Simon, figured it's his choice, it's his life, but just as a thought, do you think this is the right thing to do? I mean, I think we'll all be looking forward to reading that book and hearing Simon's point of view, because the thing is, when there's a trial, obviously you're restricted because it was decided not to prosecute for those attempts on Simon's life, alleged attempts on Simon's life. And I think that was a wise decision from the prosecution. Because, if sometimes in a trial, if there's too much for the jury to deal with, it is too much. You've got less chance of getting your guilty verdicts because the jury is going to get confused, or something could come up that puts the trial at risk, etc. So the prosecution decided to just go with the main prosecution of the three people at the lunch and the attempted murder of Ian. And I think they did the right thing, because they got when you go to trial as a prosecutor, all you want is a guilty verdict, don't you? And if that guilty verdict is going to put your client away, sorry, not your client, is going to put the accused that you're prosecuting away. You want that. That is the overriding thing. And although it seems like maybe there were attempts on Simon's life, but if that would have made the case too complicated or too difficult for you to get their head around, or so less likely to get a successful conviction, then that's probably why it was decided not to go ahead with those, with prosecuting those offences. Because this was a complicated case, as it was, that, of course, with murder in general, and especially in this one, you don't have a video, of Errin actually putting the death capture deliberately in the beef Wellington, do you? You don't have it was all circumstantial evidence, but it was overwhelming circumstantial evidence. The lies, the fact she said she'd never had a dehydrator, and then it turns out she was caught on CCTV dumping a dehydrator at the local dump. Those kind of things, but they're all of them in themselves are not enough to prosecute someone. But put it all together, and all the expert witnesses that were called, and the hospital staff, because let's not forget that when Errin was told at the hospital that, two of the people that had been at her lunch, or in fact all of the people that had been at her lunch, were on death's door, she would refuse to be checked out. She refused to be checked out herself, and she just hightailed it out of the hospital. And in the end, one of the doctors phoned the police, because he was worried about her welfare and probably suspected something. She acted so suspiciously, because, if you go to the if your relatives are literally on death's door, literally, and needing transplants, because their organs base, it's something they arrange at your house, you're going to want to be checked out. You, of course, you'd be terrified. But no, Erin also discharged herself. She said she had to get her daughter's bally bag ready for school and feed the animals, or some rubbish she came out with. Even though she'd been told that her life could be in danger. As early, doesn't it? But that combined with all the other evidence is what convicted Errin. Obviously, all these individual things on their own wouldn't have convicted her, but they were put together so well by the prosecution. The prosecutor, the chief prosecutor, Nanette, her name was it Nanette Rogers? Anyway, can't remember. It was Nanette something. She was so good. She was so good at bringing all the information together and exposing Erin's lies. That's what convicted her. I do think with Errin, it was her own lies that convicted her, and her assumption that she could hoodwink the jury, that they would be as naive as Don, Gail, Heather and Ian were, and believe the rubbish she came out with, even though, I think, didn't she speak for over 2 days at the witness stand? She was just digging a hole deeper and deeper for herself. But she thought she was clever and that she could do that. Anyway, she failed, of course. She failed miserably, and she was found guilty. Hi, Tracy. Good morning. So that's what happened, and I think everybody was relieved to see her being found guilty, to be honest, because there's always a chance she wouldn't be found guilty. This is like poisoning. I've come to realise, mainly since this case, because it's probably, interests me more now when I see these crimes with poison. It's much more common than we think. And there's probably lots of people get poisoned and never even gets discovered. It was only because the hospital was so spot on and, immediately felt suspicious of Erin's behaviour, because the symptoms of death cap mushrooms, I'm sure initially they thought it was just food poisoning, but then they're quite severe symptoms, so that all your organs shut down. So those people, they would have had a very painful and agonising death. It's not an instant death. It would have happened over a couple of days. They would have been in agony, and in the end, they had to be put into induced comas. And, the 2 ladies, they were too ill to even try a transplant with. Gail and Heather, it was decided that doing the transplant would probably kill them. So that must have been very upsetting for the medical staff, because doctors take an oath, don't they, to preserve life, etc. And to know that you've got 2 patients there who you can't help because the only thing you can do for them is give them a transplant, and that will kill them, so you're helpless. Anyway, Don was given a transplant. But he didn't survive it, sadly. Because just give him a transplant, it's not just dead easy, is it? So sadly, Don was given a transplant, but he did not survive. Ian, however, was given a transplant and did survive. So that's the only good thing, really, because, as I say, then he could at least as well give evidence at Erin's trial, and his evidence helped to convict her. But how awful for Ian, because he had such a long recovery. He'd lost his wife. He'd been married to forever. Don and Gail had been married since they were teenage sweethearts, and they died within a day of each other. So it's a very tragic case, and Erin really is a nasty person. Now she has 2 children. God knows how those children are coping with everything. She seemed to care about them. That was the only time she got upset on the witness stand, was when anyone was talking about her children. But she should have thought about that before she killed 3 people, shouldn't she? And what a legacy she's left her children with. They're going to grow up knowing that their mum is a triple murderess and tried to kill their own father as well. So, she's just a wicked woman. I mean, really, if you were trying to think of wicked as the most wicked sort of murderers, she's got to qualify for that. Well, she did win Joint Twonk of the Year last year on my channel. Her and the other guy, Travis Decker, who killed his children. Anyway, so let's have a look. Let's have a look at what it's saying about this book. So what do you think? Do you think he's right to do this? I think this will probably be cathartic for Simon. Must have been frustrating for him, knowing that he couldn't talk about, at the trial anyway, he could not talk about the intent on his life. 3, I believe. 3 times Errin prepared him food. And hi, Sean. 3 times it's thought that Errin prepared food, chicken wrap, I think one was, wasn't it? She made these sort of excuses, if you like, to what's the word? For them to go out for a walk together or whatever, spend some time together. And she prepared food, like one was definitely a chicken wrap, I think. And so a couple of times after Erin had prepared him food, Simon was very, very ill. And I mean very ill, so ill one time he was actually in intensive care. And I think he only started putting it together. I mean, I just feel with Simon, because apparently it was Errin who wanted to be separated, not Simon, So, you think, well, why would she try and kill Simon? If it were, he wanted to be with her, apparently. But it's something, there's a lot of conjecture about it. Did Errin not want to pay child support? Apparently she was annoyed with Simon because he didn't pay child support. But, Errin had a lot of money. So, I mean, I'm not saying he should have paid child support. There is children. I don't know the ins and outs of what happened there. And of course, apparently at one point when Errin came into her inheritances and had quite a lot of money, she was helping out members of Simon's family with loans for mortgages and things. Don't know what happens to them now. But, this is what I've always said about Errin. Errin liked being the queen bee. Moneybags Errin. Lady Bountiful. She wanted to be at the centre of everything, even though she didn't want Simon. Does that make so? She didn't want Simon, but she wanted control over Simon. That's what I think. Some people are like that. They've got to be number one. They've got to be queen bee or king bee. It wouldn't be king bee. It'd be king something else. Some people, it's all about that. It's like psychopathic traits, isn't it? But yeah, got to be number one, got to be in control. That's what I think it was with Errin. And then when Simon, and his family, she, as far as Errin felt, weren't supporting her enough. His mum and dad, they weren't being supportive enough of Errin. She was getting annoyed because they were probably thinking, well, you left him. You left him. Why are you bothered of what Simon's doing? And also, it'd be interesting seeing this memoir. Had Simon met anybody else? Because, these people as well, doesn't matter if they want the person or not. They don't want anyone else to have him, take away their control. They still want to be number one, even though they don't want that person. It's a very odd sort of psychopathic trait, isn't it? Because psychopaths and sociopaths, they walk amongst us, don't they? We probably know loads of them. It's like, it's only when you think about it, really think about it, you think about some of the friendships you've had or relationships you've had, and you think, oh my God, that was so wrong, and sometimes people just won't let go, even though they don't want you. They don't want you, but they don't want anyone else to have you. I think it's a definite psychopathic trait. I don't know. Because to me, I'm like the opposite. It's like, well, if somebody doesn't want me, well, I don't want them. I don't want to beg someone to be with me. So if somebody, decides that they want to finish our relationship, I'm not saying I won't be upset. I'm not saying I wouldn't send some texts or, but, once you realize that somebody doesn't want you, it's just like, oh, well, bye then. Do you know what I mean? Your loss, isn't it? And it normally is their loss. Anyway, so let's have a look at this book. So the publisher of Paterson memoir to be revealed in the coming weeks. A memoir by Simon Paterson, the estranged husband of murderer Erin Patterson, has been acquired by an as yet unnamed publisher. So, not named the publisher yet. Paterson's spokesperson, Jessica O'Donnell, told The Guardian Australia that details about the book would be revealed in the coming weeks, declining to name the publisher or say whether Paterson was writing the book himself or with a ghostwriter. Now, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine he'd have to have a ghostwriter, because if you're not a writer, it's difficult to write a book. I've written a book, that my Confessions of a Spanish Teacher, available, which is like autobiographical, but it's very difficult to write a book. And my book, I wrote really almost, I started off with a blog. So when it come to putting it, I already had the main body of, but even then, it was hard to put it all together, and so I would imagine he's getting some help, but maybe not. If you get a ghostwriter, I don't know how it works with a ghostwriter. I suppose you just tell them your story and they put it together in a readable way or whatever. Or maybe Simon is doing it himself. Sometimes books that people write themselves, they're more authentic, can't they? You can feel the rawness of it, and it can make it read. It can make it a better read as well, because you get the raw emotion. Whereas I suppose if you get a ghostwriter, hang on. So what else does it say? Simon will not be communicating at any point in time, said O'Donnell. He will allow his story to be told through the book, and that's how he wants his words to be heard. He wants to remain a private person. Well, he won't be very private when his book comes out, but I know so basically he's not doing interviews, is he? He doesn't want to appear on any interviews. He's doing his book to tell his side of the story. I should imagine it'll be a bestseller. I don't know. I'd certainly be looking out for it. And yeah, why not? I mean, he's been through a lot. He's lost his parents. His children have lost their mum. He's been through now, probably realised it, because although I think he was suspecting that maybe Errin had tried to do something to him, he didn't know for certain. Now I think he probably knows for certain, so that's quite traumatic. So in September 2025, Errin was convicted of murdering Simon Paterson's parents, Don and Gail, and his aunts, Heather Wilkinson, by poisoning them with death cap mushrooms in July 2023. I mean, this is a hell of a case, isn't it, really? The more you think about it, you know, we covered the trial, and we've been outraged about Errin, but even now, when you think about it, it's a real, you know, it's you know, it's one of those that if you made a film out of it, probably people won't believe it. I mean, there'll be a film, I'm sure, sooner or later. I think what just astounds me, takes my breath away, is the level of preparation. You know, the level of prep to go out foraging those poisonous mushrooms, you know, planning in your head, how evil have you got to be? You know, the thing is, things happen. People sometimes kill in rage, you know, in the moment of madness, or if somebody's been drinking or taking drugs, or I don't know, or people kill for love or financial gain or custody battles. I think the thing with Errin, you just think Errin had everything, really. What was her purpose was so evil, you know, because these people, they hadn't even done anything to her. You know, there wasn't as if, do you know what I mean? We look for a reason why people do things. With Errin, it's so difficult. The only reason Errin did this was pure spite, you know, on these people who had done nothing wrong to her, had only supported her, you know, and that's how she repaid them. And not only that, she planned it. And I think the thing for me will always be that she sat and watched them eat that meal, knowing what was going to happen afterwards. What sort of, that's a different level of cruelty, malevolence, you know, spite. You just can't imagine, can you? You know, just, it's unbelievable to me that somebody could do that. And I always think of how they said goodbye. You know, did she give them a hug and a kiss and see you at church next week? Or, you know, just, I'd like to have been a fly on the wall to see how did she say goodbye to them, knowing that they were dead. They were dead people walking, as far as she was concerned. Dead people walking. And then as soon as they'd gone on that Saturday afternoon, off she went to the tip to dispose of something. We don't know what she disposed of really that day. You know, the plates have never been discovered. I'm still obsessed about the plates. What happened to the plates? You know, so she just like said goodbye to them, knowing they were dead people walking. Just, you know, calmly went about her day, didn't she? And the following day, she was off supposedly taking her son to his flying lessons, miles away, hours drive away, even though supposedly she had chronic diarrhea. But she decided in white trousers to go off on a drive of an hours long drive to take her son to flying classes. And then she stopped, didn't she, at the restroom? Was it 9 seconds? She went into the bathroom and came out, even though she's supposed to have chronic diarrhea. And she said she'd had to stop it in the bush to go to the toilet, but her son, who was with her, had no recollection of that. She even called her own children a liar because her children didn't appear in court, but statements were read out. And she even said they were liars, really, because she disputed what they said. You know, she's... And then she just carried on. Anyway, that flying lesson was cancelled in the end by the instructor. Apparently, Erin wasn't very happy about that. So she went home, carried on her day, didn't she? Carried on her day, ate a load of cake. Didn't she? The cake that, was it Heather had taken round there? Erin ate about 3 portions of it. I mean, the thing is, when you've got an upset tummy, what you don't do is eat 3 portions of cake, is it? You know, ridiculous. And then, as I say, the next day, as soon as she went to the hospital and was told that there's a possibility that it was poisoning by death cap mushrooms, then she literally did SHIT herself. She was out of that hospital so quick because she had to go back home and hide all the evidence because she knew she'd been caught out, didn't she? She was still wearing white trousers or cream trousers. Seems like that's what she always wears. So probably the same pair, you know. And the thing is, if you've got an upset tummy and you think you might have an accident, you're not gonna wear white trousers, are you? But anyway, she's just such a vile woman. I can't think of any redeeming feature for Erin at all. You know, the depth of this evil that she did, you know, just awful. As I say, I don't know what's happening with her children. Is she getting visits from her children? Anyway, O'Donnell said that publication of Simon Paterson's memoir would be delayed until the conclusion of appeals processes linked with the case. Yeah, so this is the problem because there's an appeal going on, and I expect that whatever's in this memoir, you know, Simon giving his version of the events when he thinks he was poisoned, allegedly, they won't want it to affect the appeal. You know, what they won't want is to give the defence anything, you know, that could call into question Erin's conviction, or, you know, they want the appeals process to go through, the appeal to be denied or whatever. Hopefully, I hope she gets an even longer sentence. You know, I hope the prosecution's appeal succeeds. I don't think 33 years was enough. I think she should be in prison forever. She doesn't deserve to ever come out of prison. You know, I just think, what worse crime can you do than kill 3 innocent people and nearly kill another one by inviting them round to your house for a meal that you've prepared, planned, you know, thought it wasn't a crime of passion, you know, it was a crime of premeditation and spite. What more have you got to do to get life without parole? And of course, the judge said that the reason he gave her the slim possibility of parole if she lives that long is that he felt that she would be in solitary confinement all her prison stay. So I think he was just trying to be nice. I don't know. It's like, bless poor Erin. She's going to be on her own for 33 years. So let's give her a chance at coming out and just having one last poison before she dies. My God. No one's going to go round to her house for tea, are they? You know what I mean? What's the point in releasing her? Who's going to be there waiting for her, and who's going to socialise with her? What's the point? Just leave her in prison. Anyway, so apparently it's going to be delayed until the conclusion of appeals processes linked with the case. And she said, I would imagine there will be a lot of people who would like to understand Simon's point of view. And I think that's true. I think one thing that we were sort of surprised at was if Simon suspected, that she had tried to poison him. You feel like, could he have stopped his parents going around there that day? But he, from what I can gather, he did. Certainly Don knew about the possibility that Errin had tried to poison Simon. But Don probably didn't think for a minute that she would try and do it to them. But yeah, it'd be good to hear it from Simon's own mouth, won't it? Like what happened and the situation. So I'm just going to read a different article, like probably saying more or less same thing, but just to give different. It's talking about the same thing, but mushroom murderer's estranged husband Simon Paterson writing his memoir. So there he is. So the thing is, he'll forever be, the husband of Erin Patterson. Like, I hope the children are all right. I don't know how the children will feel about this memoir. I mean, it won't be anything bad about them, obviously, but I really feel for the children because she is their mum. And, it seemed to be that she was a good mum. That's what everyone keeps saying. She was a good mum. Well, to me, she's not that good a mum, is she, if she's put her children in this position? So Simon Paterson, the estranged husband of convicted triple murder Erin Patterson, is working on a memoir with a publisher. He has accused his former partner of poisoning him on multiple occasions, but the allegations in relation to him were dropped by the prosecutors for the court case that dealt with the deadly meal she served her in-laws in July 2023. So his media manager, Jessica O'Donnell, says she expects to make a joint announcement with the publisher about the book in coming weeks. Now, I don't know what happens to Erin's assets. Errin has got a lot of assets. She's got that big house there where she murdered them. She got millions of Australian dollars, didn't she, in assets, etc. From inheritances. I mean, she's never really worked properly. Has she? She's one of those people. She was an air traffic controller at one point. She left there under shady circumstances. She then one night when she was drunk, she had previous convictions for wrapping her car around a tree when she was driving drunk. What else did she do? Oh, and then I think the biggest relief for me as well in this case was she was considering training to be a midwife. Oh my God, could you imagine Erin Patterson as a midwife? Oh God, with all that responsibility for vulnerable human beings, babies, I just think of Lucy Letby, Bev Allett, these babies. Oh God, imagine her being a midwife. Oh my God. I think Errin, she would have done more things. She may have even done other things that we just don't know about, She would, if she would have got away with this is my opinion. If she would have got away with this, she would have done other things, I think, because she thought she was so omnipotent, so clever, so she would have got this rush of adrenaline that she had this secret, that she'd murdered these people and nobody knew, because she was so clever and so much more clever than everybody else. And she would have killed other people, I think. And I don't think even her children would have been safe, because you know what, she might love them now while they're young and that, but as they get older and they start rebelling against her or start getting in her way for whatever reason, would she have done something to them? I wouldn't be surprised. And certainly if she become a midwife, You wouldn't like to think of her being in charge of babies, would you? And having that position of power, like Letby and like Beverly and other, not all nurses and things are good people. There's a lot of lovely nurses out there. There's a lot of psychopath nurses out there that go around killing people. Look at Dr. Shipman. How many people he killed? Hundreds. So sadly, the caring profession does attract psychopaths as well, because any profession that puts people in a position of power and control will be attractive to a psychopath, won't it? Being in charge of children, being in charge of old people, just giving you that carte blanche or the opportunity, let's say, not carte blanche, but the opportunity to do bad things to people who are vulnerable and can't fight back. So yeah, now she's 50, Erin, or in her 50s. Has she done this to anybody else? I would not. It seems like she's tried to do it to Simon a few times, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's more victims of Erin out there, but whether we'll ever find out, I don't know. So Paterson is working on a memoir with details of the book deal imminent, his spokesperson says. He also made several allegations of being poisoned himself, but these were not part of her Supreme Court trial. Is that it? Yeah, that's her. That's the media. Imagine having to take on a media person, God, he looks quite happy there, doesn't he? He's probably happy that Errin is behind bars, that's for sure. And he doesn't have to worry about her and his kids. He must be worried about his kids as well. So this was because in the lead up to the trial, Justice Christopher Beale ordered that charges related to Mr. Patterson be dropped from the case. And Mr. Patterson referenced frustration with the discontinued charges in court last year, but not in front of the jury. And he said, I'm sitting here half thinking about the things I'm not allowed to talk about. Yeah, it must be frustrating. There she was, being led into the police van, the wicked witch, ding dong. I'm sitting here half thinking about the things I'm not allowed to talk about. Must be frustrating. Someone's tried to kill him and he can't talk about it. So Jessica O'Donnell issued a statement saying she'd been working with him on the recovery phase of his experience, including the development of a memoir, and a formal announcement regarding the memoir, including publisher and timeline, will follow in due course. Miss O'Donnell told ABC a joint announcement between herself and the publisher was very imminent, perhaps in the next few weeks, but she would not be drawn on the content of the memoir. She said she had to be careful not to provide any details as there were legal proceedings still in play, referring to the appeal process launched by Erin Patterson late last year. And she said that Mr. Paterson's case was the most significant she'd ever taken on. Yeah, I bet it is. 3 years ago, when news first started to break, I didn't think anyone could have guessed how big this would become. Erin Patterson was convicted of the murders of Simon's parents, Don and Gail's sister, Heather, and the attempted murder of Heather's husband, Ian, who all fell ill after a lunch laced with death cap mushrooms she hosted. Her murder trial did not deal with alleged food poisoning incidents, including Simon, but were later made public after the conclusion of the trial. So yeah, as we've been so invested in that case, I thought I would let you know what's going on. Let me know what you think. Do you think Simon's right to publish his memoir and get it all off his chest? It doesn't really matter what we think. It's Simon's life. Simon's lived it. Simon's the one who's lost his parents and his aunts. been through what he's been through. And personally, I think he's got the right to do whatever he wants. And if that writing the memoir helps him, either, you know, emotionally or financially, I think it's good, because if you can, you know, get something positive out of this horrible event, then good luck to you, Simon, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I'm sure you'll all let me know what you think. Please don't forget to leave your DNA on the like button and the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Thank you for watching. I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. Bye.